working freely amongst the jurors, we are still unable to reach a unanimous decision.
That's why they waited so long to take him to trial. They was waiting for that law to pass.
For 6 grueling years, YNW Melly remained trapped behind the cold, unforgiving walls of a jail cell, waiting for a verdict that seemed destined never to come. It was not just a delay in justice. It was a calculated, painstaking game of legal chess played by a system determined to break him down. Florida's changing laws gave prosecutors the leverage they needed to keep Melly locked away, and many believed this was done intentionally to ensure the harshest possible punishment, the death penalty. The public
trial.
And he is accused of killing 2 fellow rappers back in 2018 in Broward County. Local 10's Ian Margol is live in Fort Lauderdale with the latest from court today. Ian?
Right now, as we speak, the state's final witness is on the stand. And earlier today, jurors heard from a man who was one of the last people to see those victims alive on the night of the murder.
The media and Melly's supporters waited anxiously, desperate for closure. Yet the wheels of justice turned agonizingly slow. When the verdict finally emerged, it shocked everyone, leaving the world stunned and hungry for answers. Today, we unravel this complex and dramatic saga, diving deep into the courtroom battles, the emotional testimonies, and the bombshell revelations that gripped this case from the start. The story begins with Melly's prolonged imprisonment, a period marked by relentless delays and postponements. His legal team fought tirelessly to secure bond and his release, arguing that he should not languish in jail without a trial.
As for when exactly that is going to happen, it's unclear. We are getting towards the end of the day today. They are still well into questioning him, so they likely will not wrap up today. But once they do, it'll be the defense's turn to start bringing their own witnesses. If Melly is eventually convicted of these 2 murder charges, he could face the death penalty.
But the prosecution pushed back fiercely, emphasizing the grave nature of the charges, 2 counts of first-degree murder, and warning that Melly posed a significant flight risk. The judge sided with the prosecution, and Melly's fate was sealed, behind bars, suspended in legal limbo. The complexity of the case, coupled with the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on court systems nationwide, turned the trial into a slow-burning drama. Meanwhile, supporters rallied to Melly's cause, launching social media campaigns demanding a fair trial and freedom until proven guilty. Critics, however, stood firm on the side of the prosecution, insisting that the safety of the community.
Thanks for joining us here on Law and Crime. I'm Anjanette Levy. A juror in YNW Melly's double murder trial has spoken to a local TV station in Florida. Melly, whose legal name is Jamel Demons, faces 2 counts of first-degree murder in the October 2018 deaths of his 2 friends, Chris Thomas Jr. and Anthony Williams, who went by YNW Juvie and YNW Sack Chaser.
This emotional tug-of-war set the stage for a courtroom battle that captured the nation's attention. On the fateful night of October 26, 2018, the world's perception of YNW Melly changed forever. Riding through the streets of South Florida with his closest friends, Anthony YNW Sack Chaser Williams and Christopher YNW Juvie Thomas Jr., what began as a routine drive ended in a nightmare. Shots were fired, and both friends were brutally gunned down. Melly initially claimed the tragedy was a drive-by shooting, an unfortunate case of innocent victims caught in the crossfire. However, as investigators peeled back layers of the story, the narrative darkened.
Off the top at 6, we begin with a stunning development in the double murder trial of YNW Melly.
After days of deliberations, the jury was deadlocked, leading the judge to declare a mistrial. And Local 10's Joseph Ojo was at the courthouse in Fort Lauderdale with reaction. And what happens next?
Ballistics analysis revealed that the fatal bullets were fired from inside the vehicle, directly implicating Melly. Witnesses testified they saw Melly holding a firearm and heard threatening remarks directed at his friends that night. The courtroom transformed into a stage where Melly went from grieving friend to prime suspect in a chilling murder case. Melly's defense team fought back with everything.
Ending after 3 days, with the jury not able to come up with a unanimous decision to decide the fate of YNW Melly.
I am going to just declare mistrial.
We are somewhat disappointed that Melly is not walking out the door with us.
Jamel Demons was sitting in the back seat of that Jeep. And he was the one that fired the fatal shots that killed Christopher Thomas and Anthony Williams.
They had, arguing that the prosecution's case was circumstantial and riddled with speculation. They maintained that Melly had no motive to kill his closest friends and that there was no direct proof linking him to the crime beyond reasonable doubt. But the prosecution wielded a powerful weapon, a single Instagram message where Melly allegedly said, "I did that This small, seemingly casual text was presented as a damning confession, causing a ripple of shock across the courtroom.
There's a lack of evidence. There is a conflict in the evidence, and the evidence itself, and the investigation itself, stinks.
And the jury did have a chance to decide on a lesser charge. This case will be retrialed, so we will keep you updated. We're here in Fort Lauderdale. I'm Joseph Ojo, Local 10 News.
The image of Melly, a young man torn between fear, pain, and hope, was etched into the minds of those watching his trial. His eyes reflected the torment of a soul battling to survive both the legal onslaught and the public's judgment. One of the most controversial aspects of this case was the prosecution's decision to introduce Melly's own music as evidence. Over 50 songs, dozens of audio files, and several music videos were submitted to the court, each dissected for lyrics and imagery that prosecutors claimed revealed Melly's mindset and possible motives.
Awesome. Thank you. State Young, we're back on your instructions on the case 34, 3.13, submitting cases on jury. In just a few moments, you will be taken to the jury room by the court deputy.
His breakout hit Murder on My Mind became a focal point, interpreted as a literal confession rather than artistic expression. This tactic ignited fierce debate across the music and legal communities. Critics argued that using rap lyrics as evidence is a dangerous precedent that criminalizes creative freedom and unfairly targets hip-hop artists, a form of expression deeply rooted in storytelling and metaphor. Prominent figures such as Jay-Z and Fat Joe publicly denounced this approach, fighting to protect the artistic rights of musicians and calling for reform in how the law interprets lyrical content.
The first thing you should do is choose a foreperson who will preside over your deliberations. The foreperson should see to it that your discussions are carried on in an organized way and that everyone has a fair chance to be heard. It is also the foreperson's job to sign and date the verdict form when all of you have agreed on a verdict and to bring the verdict forms back to the courtroom when you return. During deliberations, jurors must communicate about the case only with one another and only when all jurors are present in the jury room.
Beyond the courtroom drama, Melly's personal history paints a complex portrait of a young man caught between two worlds. Growing up in a troubled South Florida neighborhood, Melly was captivated by music icons like Michael Jackson and Chris Brown, dreaming of a career that could lift him out of hardship. But his early life was shadowed by exposure to violence and firearms. As a child, he discovered a revolver hidden under his uncle's couch and carried it with him everywhere, even to school. This early fascination with guns would later echo in his music and haunt his real life.
If a juror goes to the restroom, the deliberation should stop until the juror returns. You are not to communicate with any person outside the jury about this case. Until you have reached a verdict, you must not talk about this case in person or through the telephone, writing, or electronic communication such as a blog, Twitter, email, text message, or any other means. Do not contact anyone to assist you during deliberations. These communication rules apply until I discharge you at the end of the case.
His teenage years brought serious legal troubles, including charges of aggravated assault and discharging a firearm in public after an incident at his high school. These experiences shaped Melly's music, infusing it with raw emotion and a haunting realism that resonated with millions, but also made him a target for law enforcement scrutiny. The prosecution's case further deepened with the testimony of gang experts who linked Melly to the G-Shine Bloods, a violent street gang.
If you become aware of any violation of these instructions, or of any other instruction I have given in this case, you must tell me by giving a note to our court deputy. Many of them have cell phones, tablets, laptops, or other electronic devices here in the courtroom. The rules do not allow you to bring your phones or any of those types of electronic devices into the jury room. Kindly leave those devices on your seats where they will be guarded by the court deputy.
Experts claimed Melly used gang slang in his messages and was actively involved in gang-related activities, painting a picture of a dangerous lifestyle intertwined with his music career. Phone records placed him near the crime scene that night, and surveillance footage tracked his movements before and after the shootings. DNA analysts found traces potentially linked to Melly in the vehicle, adding layers of complexity to the case. Every piece of evidence stacked against him, building a narrative prosecutors hoped would lead to conviction.
While you deliberate. If you need to communicate with me, send a note to the court deputy. If you have voted, do not disclose the actual vote in the note. If you have a question, I will talk with the attorneys before I answer, so it may take some time. You may continue your deliberations while you wait for my answer. I will answer any question, if I can, in writing or orally here in open court. During the trial, items were received in evidence of exhibits. You may examine whatever exhibits you think will help you in your deliberations.